you're going to do 3 programs to go along with this chapter, and they're going to build on each other incrementally. You'll copy each program with a new name or save it as a new name as you move forward. For your first program, you're only doing output. You're using print statements to create or display on screen a poem or a song or something like that. You'll also have at least one comment describing what that program holds. In the next section, we're going to take this program and we're going to modify it to use variables. Variables are named places in memory where you can store different things. I like to think of them as a post office box. Every time you go to your post office box with your number, when you open it, there's going to be something different inside of it. It's always going to be mail, but it could be a gift, it could be a bill, it could be an advertisement. It's going to vary, hence a variable. So think of it like that. We're going to a storage location that we've assigned a name. And there are different types of things that we can hold in a variable. So variables can hold strings, which are encased in quotes. That makes it a string literal. So a string is whatever is in the quotes here. You can have numbers, which can be in quotes if they're a string as well. So a string, if we put quotes around the number, it would be taken as text or a string. We wouldn't be able to do math with it unless we converted it to a number. So these are the 2 first types of variables that we're going to work with. And for this program, we're only going to be working with strings. So I'm going to take that first line of the program and so we're going to have a variable here and a variable here. And if you look up Mad Libs online, you can see how it's played. It's a common children's game where you get descriptive words where you ask the other person who's playing to give you the words. In our third step in the program, we'll actually be getting input from the user that we'll assign to the variables. The second iteration, we're just going to be assigning variables. So here, the poem goes, Mary had a little lamb. So we're going to make the representation here, name, and we're going to assign in quotes, both sides, Matthew to it. So instead of saying Mary had a little lamb, we're going to put the variable here, and this is a lowercase m, so we're going to use name. And then whatever is stored in here will display here. But you have to be careful. Either here or here, we would be changing this so that this becomes when we're doing our print statement, to use the variable, we have to change it like this. Instead of saying Mary, we're going to have to put in the variable, and we do it by using the variable name. So here we would not put in Matthew, that's assigned to the variable, we would put in name. And then when you have your basic text, we're going to add those together. We're going to combine them. The official name for that is to concatenate them using a plus sign. And then you have to have your quotes on this string that you're providing. And you make sure to have a space before here, so when it displays, you get the name, a space, and then the word. So we'd have multiple variables that we would use multiple times throughout the program. We would also have animal. So in our poem, it's Mary had a little lamb. So we're going to have animal equal to cat. And every place that we would have used lamb in the poem, we're going to refer to animal. And since this is what's stored in the animal location, it will display as cat. In the next step of the program, which will be your third program for the week, we're going to convert that set of variables to things that we're going to get from the user. So how to get input from the user keyboard. So before we go on to getting input, we need to talk a little bit more about the types of variables you can work with and how to name them. Now, we're naming a spot in memory that we can retrieve things from. And each language has its own rules for how you can name things. In Python, in this class, we're going to be naming things using the following convention. For regular variables, we're going to use underscores. So we'll have day underscore of underscore week. Now, you are technically allowed to use capital letters. We're not going to do that in our normal variables. And you never use spaces in a variable name in any language. So we're going to use underscores. This is the correct way to do a variable name. Now, you can use an underscore at the front. You can use a capital or a lowercase. So for regular variable names, there's special cases where we will use capitals, but your normal variables, it's all going to be lowercase. In other languages, you're allowed to use something called camelback, which would be the first word has a lowercase. Each additional word starts with an uppercase. This is allowed, but in this class, we're not using this one. We're using this one because our compiler will give you an error and you won't get your green check mark if you do it this way. When we're storing data in variables, we can store, there's three primary types of data you're going to store. We've already talked about a string. A string is encased in quotes. So if we are doing a number, if we're going to do pi, we assign it, and the equals is the assignment sign, 3.14. This is a floating point number because it has a decimal, otherwise known as a float. If we have the variable answer, the equal sign is assigning the value of 42 to answer. This is an integer. It's a whole number with no fraction, no decimal point. And strings, if we set it to 42 like this, in quotes, then it's a string. We can only print output that is string. There are ways to convert from an int to a float to a string, and we will be doing that. You can reassign variables. So let's say we have answer equals 42. And then we print answer. We could, if we were to do this again, we can reuse this variable but if we were to print again, the value in it would change. So what would display on the screen, the first time we ran, when we go to this number, this is assigning it. The next step in the logic is to print it. So it would print 42. And it will actually accept this if you're not concatenating it with another value. If you're just printing the variable, this is allowed. Then this would be print 50. But if we want to add a string to that, there's two ways to do that. You can print multiple things. And you can print multiple separate things, or you can combine them into one thing. And they have different rules and they work in slightly different ways. If we were to concatenate things, we might print. So if we want to combine this with some static text, we could print the answer is, in quotes, and then we could put a comma, and we could put in answer. And this is allowed, and this will work. This is not in quotes because it's referring to the variable name answer, and it will print what's stored in here. This works. If we do it this way, the answer is, with a space and then a quote, and then we try to concatenate using a plus sign and put in answer, this does not work. It is not allowed because this would be a number, and we can't add a number to a string. We have to convert it to a string. So we would do that by using the str command, and then you have a parenthesis to close the outside one. These close the inside one. It converts 42 to be 42 as a string, and then we can concatenate them together into one thing. So if you're putting up separate things separated by a comma, these are two separate entities. You can print a number, but you can't add it to a string. That's not allowed. So when you're working with output, be aware of all these rules. And the compiler gives you good feedback, telling you that things aren't allowed. So if you do something you're not allowed to do, it should give you a warning and stop you.